Welcome to Brainstoryum. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dreampunk and deeply weird fantasy author. And yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the Surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard and this is episode 52 of Brainstoryum. Well, my personal life has been a bit manic lately with major roof works going on. We're basically having the entire roof replaced. And the noise has been like 3 or 4 ogres trying to smash their way in through the ceiling with truncheons. I was quite surprised to look out the window the other day and see humans, mere humans, on the scaffolding. So today, I'm grateful that I can bask in one of my favourite distractions, the delicious escape of storytelling, brainstorming ideas and sharing them with you. So whatever you've been up to this week, I'm glad you're able to enjoy this with me. I have a packed show for you today with some great new story ideas suggested by listeners. Plus, there will be 3 new bizarre writing prompts today plucked from the depths of the Socks of Destiny. First things first, let's hear the story ideas sent in by my highly imaginative listeners. The susurrant plunder, a curious phrase indeed. It sounds like murmuring treasure, stolen goods that whisper. The rabbit hole I dived into when this phrase came up in the last show was one of treasure hunting and a secret history of pirates. But this is only one rabbit hole among countless possibilities, since everyone's imagination is unique. Nick Vracar said, Jasper was a thief who stole thoughts. He could hear them, errant thoughts of passers-by as whispers and murmurs. One day he hears a thought, a strange one, a thought that he knows belongs to a killer. He knows the killer, but how can he prove anything with only the susurrant plunder? Aha! Nick's flipped it round and seen the susurrant plunder from the opposite perspective than what I was looking at. The susurrant sound is the plunder. Not treasure that whispers, but whispers that are a kind of treasure or a curse. Very inventive twist there. This could make for a very weird thriller. Someone who can hear other people's thoughts, including murderous desire. Another thought-based idea comes from Jan Miklasevic. A trove of treasure that whispers ungodly things in the night. These seep into the dreams of those who stole it, eventually driving them to murder or suicide. Well, that's very rich with possibilities as well. Just a glimpse of what you could explore with the evil thoughts of plunder. A very different idea from Ev Days, who suggested a story of a young army ant who rises up against all odds to lead his ant colony into an era of peace following a huge plundering raid on a neighbouring colony in the grasslands of Honduras. She added, it's as if they were living in a monastery hearing the ever-present sound of the Savanic susurrations. When I read this, I felt like I could really hear the susurrant grasses, which would be so loud to the ants. I do like how something tiny, a susurrant noise, a mere whisper, has led Ev to think of small creatures, a world that's subtle and hardly noticeable to us, but could be reimagined on a grand scale. Thank you, Ev. What have I got next? Sean McGillis, who's another writer who flipped the susurrant plunder on its head as well, as everyone seems to be doing so. He said, "It gives me an idea of a sound that robs people of their ability to think on their own. And they become a collective which the force behind the sound uses, and that could be good or bad." I was thinking about this, trying to wrap my head around this. So the people's ability to think and act independently is the plunder. It is the thing that is stolen by the susurrant sound. It feels quite sci-fi. Again, quite a big story idea with far-reaching possibilities. And finally, I was tickled by an idea from a writer of bizarro fiction, Liam Shardlow, who said, "Jonathan Produce, high-flying thief for hire, is tasked to steal suspicious currants, susurrants, from a grocer's that sells talking fruit." So just let that sink in for a second. So many questions. Always a good sign, I think. Is this set in another world completely? Or does this crazy shop exist in a well-hidden part of this world? In a shop that already sells talking fruit, what exactly is suspicious about these currants, the susurrants? Is it that they whisper when other fruits shout? Do they lie when other fruits commonly tell the truth? Who is hiring Mr. Produce to steal them, and why? It must be a dangerous task to get someone else to do it. And when I was all these thoughts were going through my head as I'm reading his post on Twitter, and then Liam added at the very end, "Tomb Raider meets Waitrose." Oh, that's just brilliant. Thank you for your idea, Liam. Plenty to explore there. And thanks to everyone who responded with story suggestions. Once again, I was blown away by the sheer variety and depth of these ideas. Right, time for some more story plunder. It's time to reach for the susurrant socks of destiny. That's right. And for those who haven't listened before or perhaps have forgotten how it works, Exquisite Corpse mixes your words and phrases into a sentence that goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun. So let's reach into the first sock and get ourselves a describing word. This is from Elena Dennison. Opalescent. Okay, so I did have to look this up just to double check that I got it right. And it means showing many small points of shifting colour against a pale or dark background, according to my Oxford Concise Dictionary. I always like to be sure. So let's get our noun from the noun sock. This is from Wendy. Writer. An opalescent writer. Let's grab an action. This is from Robin the Mail Lady. Peeked over the edge of. That's a very intriguing action. Let's try another describing word. This is from Wendy again. Intense. And a final noun to finish our first Exquisite Corpse is from Captain Random 10. Random indeed. Clown costume designer. Okay, so I'm going to read through the entire Exquisite Corpse. we have the opalescent writer peeked over the edge of the intense clown costume designer. Of course we do. I think I might need some green tea already. What do you reckon? Okay, let's just give this a stir. Right. Okay, always good for inspiration, a bit of green tea. Okay, so to start with opalescent, that makes me think of a marble tabletop where the colours seem to shift under a bright kitchen light as you move around. Or maybe some of those weird nail varnishes you get with a shimmer effect. Makeup and special effects that you can wear. Perhaps I'm nudging towards that because of the clown costume designer at the other end of the Exquisite Corpse. Peeked over the edge as an action makes me want to treat the last section of this sentence as a place, not a person, but instead we have an intense clown costume designer. So the opalescent writer peeked over the edge of the intense clown costume designer. See if I can make sense of this. So what if a writer is spying on a clown costume designer? Because peeked over the edge of just makes me imagine someone peering over their shoulder. So whether this is in the costume designer's own home or in the warehouse that they work in to produce giant shoes, big shiny buttons, and garish makeup that glimmers as it moves in the light. I know that it's the writer that's opalescent, but I can't help but wonder if this is because she got some of that makeup on her hands by spying on the clown costume designer. So I'm thinking about the research that we as writers sometimes need to do. And I've read some really funny social media posts about the kind of scary things that crime writers in particular and murder mystery writers have to look up. Ways to kill people, ingredients of poisons, how you might cover up a murder, the dodgiest browsing history ever, enough to make you paranoid that the police might be watching with good reason. But this writer, our protagonist, has stepped away from the labyrinth of Google searches. Rather than stay at her desk, she's spying in person, in a factory or a warehouse where clown costumes are being manufactured. Why would she do that? Why clown costumes? Is it the association with horror or with circuses that appeals to her storytelling sensibilities? And she could have just got in contact with the manufacturers and asked them to do a visit. Why not be open with them instead of peeking over the edge of a wall or a windowsill or sneaking in? Maybe it's part of the process for her. She gets a little thrill from doing something she shouldn't, trespassing. Her heart beats like a warning against her ribcage as she hangs around the gates, trying to think of an excuse to just walk right in. Should she pretend that she's got a delivery or that she's looking for directions for somewhere else that's nearby? It's lunchtime. Maybe that's why it seems so empty. Voices murmur behind a door at the far end of the corridor. She steps softly into a room. It's plain white, like a hospital ward, except that the area is broken into sections by tall fold-out screens. Sewing machines squat on L-shaped desks. Piles of fabric are tumbled in boxes and baskets. A groan freezes her to the spot. Silence rings louder than ever. She has to see who that was. They might be hurt. She shakes herself, strides up to the screen, and, feeling stupid, knocks and calls, "Hello? Are you okay?" She peers around it. A man strapped down on a hospital bed, writhing against his binds, covered in white makeup. What is going on here? She's on the cusp of a horrific discovery. Experiments to transform people into clowns? This could be some very weird fantasy horror. There's something in that white paint. She gets it on her fingers, then finds herself developing angry, violent tendencies until she can scrub the last of it off. And she's stumbled across a better story idea than she was imagining for her next book. What is she going to do? Who is she going to tell? I've a feeling she's getting too much of a thrill from all this to tell anyone. Maybe she has some psychopathic tendencies herself that brought her here in the first place. She needs the adrenaline rush of breaking and entering to get her muse working and her ideas stirring. And so she'll keep poking around, taking risks to find out more and more, feeling herself to be part of some movie that's unfolding before her. She doesn't quite let herself believe that it's real. And who would believe her anyway if she told them? The perfect story is unravelling before her. She can't stop now. Well, that's a really freaky idea. One for the horror fans, I think. Okay, let's try it for another Exquisite Corpse. Right, our first describing word is from Eric Montgomery, boisterous. Let's try for a noun. This is from Paul Benfield, rocking chair. A boisterous rocking chair. Okay, let's have a look for an action. This is from Robin the Mail Lady. Oh God. Fished in the lake for. Seems unlikely, but we'll find a way to make it work. Right, next word is from Robin the Mail Lady again. Ragged. And then finally, final noun is from Paul Thomas. Secret passage. Ooh, this is a weird one. Okay, so the entire Exquisite Corpse is the boisterous rocking chair fished in the lake for the ragged secret passage. Good grief. How can a chair fish for anything? And the boisterous rocking chair. This hints at a character for sure. Someone who's a bit of a know-it-all, telling other people what to do or think. Like a haunted chair, a chair that is haunted by a person like that. What if the original boisterous owner of the chair has died and her nephew has cleared out her house and given the chair, along with various other pieces of furniture, old paintings and ornaments, knickknacks, to a charity shop, or maybe he sells it to a second-hand shop if he thinks there's a little bit of value there. Someone in a trench coat, I feel, on a rainy day, very grey, comes into the shop bargain hunting. I feel like her name is Rosa. She wouldn't admit it easily, but she is looking for antiques, unexpected treasure, a rare piece of value that slipped through the fingers of some unsuspecting person who's had a clear out of their loft or their boisterous old aunt's place. There's something about the rocking chair that catches Rosa's interest. There are these thin strands of basket weave overlaying the smooth wood on the arms of the chair and the big looping arch of the back. The twirls and twists of basket weave, apparently glued on, form curious patterns. Are they fish? Or dolphins? Whales? Irresistibly, she traces a finger over them, but she glances away quickly, feigning interest in a writing desk and a 1930s-style tea trolley next to it. She often does this when she's mulling over a potential purchase to appear only casually interested, in case the shop owner senses how keen she is and resists any price negotiations. Oh, but this chair. This rocking chair has stories to tell. Rosa cannot help but pore over it, her fingers still following the pattern of swirls, the little bumps that curl over each other, almost seeming to move. She blinks. The shapes appear different to what she thought she saw a moment ago. But that's silly. It's a solid chair, and these weaving patterns were glued down years ago, perhaps 1940s. There's a price tag, but she pretends not to have seen it, so she can feign dismay and surprise when the shop owner tells her, "Excuse me, how much is this rocking chair?" But what comes next? How can a chair, even a boisterous rocking chair, fish in a lake for a ragged secret passage? A ragged secret passage under a lake? It sounds like an underwater cave. But what business would a boisterous old auntie have in such a place? And after death, too, having haunted her favourite chair. So that 2 weeks later, Rosa, who's never fly-tipped anything in her life, much less an antique, feels compelled in the middle of the night to dump the chair at the side of a local lake. Unless the old woman wasn't just an old woman. She was once a mermaid and had a run-in with a witch who cursed her to a human body for the latter part of her life, until death released her. So what next? I think it all depends on what this backstory is all about. Why was the old woman, this aunt, targeted by the witch? What was the reason for their disagreement and this lifelong spell? What lies buried inside the underwater secret passage, in cave tunnels under the cool, flat lake? There must be an urgency in the aunt that lay dormant throughout her whole human life, or heavily suppressed, that is finally unleashed after her bodily death, a powerful urge to return to the water, so powerful she's haunted a rocking chair to the point that its new owner is compelled to bring it back here without any understanding of why. And what happens when the rocking chair falls into the water with a crash? Does it transform, or does it just come to rest at the bottom, releasing her spirit back to the water? All these potential directions in which you can take the story depend on how you answer these questions about the characters' pasts. And whose story is it going to be? Is it Rosa's? Or is it the aunt's? Or a blend of both? Lots of things to explore there. But I think it's time for our third and final Exquisite Corpse of the day. Let's see. Our first describing word is from Sean, also known as blue wizard fax. Brindled. Actually, I looked this up and I did scribble some notes around the edge of this because I wasn't quite sure at first. It means brownish or tawny with streaks of another colour, but usually it's talking about a domestic animal like a dog. So kind of stripy. Let's try for a noun. This is from Robin the Mail Lady. Racehorse. Ah, it's an animal. Well, what are the chances? Okay, let's try for an action. This is from Paul Benfield. Lost but then retrieved. It's an interesting one. Let's reach for another describing word. If I can get my hand out. This is from me. Uptight. Okay. And a final word, a final noun is from, it's a social ID, go rhyming. Dragon. Okay, it's a creature one. It's a creature one, and the entire Exquisite Corpse is the brindled, or stripy, racehorse, lost but then retrieved, the uptight dragon. Ooh. Well, that is weird. When we're talking about a racehorse losing, then retrieving a dragon, it makes me think that the dragon has to be a toy. But then I've never heard of horses having toys, especially not racehorses who are bred for business, in effect. Then again, what if this racehorse is owned by a little girl, a spoilt little girl, who wants to think of her horse as being similar to a giant pet dog? Will he play fetch for her? I'm not sure whether a horse would ever do that, though a child might try. What else? A racehorse loses, then retrieves an uptight dragon. It's making me think about the way when greyhounds race, they're chasing after a very ragged little bunny toy or something like that. I think it looks like I think it's meant to be a rabbit to sort of encourage them to run. But I mean, you don't do the same thing with racehorses, obviously. But what if you did to encourage them to go faster? What would they chase after? If dragons were available, that's not an obvious choice. Unless this is a world where dragons have become pests. They're so commonplace that people are trying to control their numbers. But how could that come to be? People talk about how they used to be thought of as fairy tale creatures in the good old days, but then, I don't know, some kind of climate change happens. Something changes to give dragons a chance to breed and flourish once more. I'm still struggling to imagine them as being something that you would use in an actual race, a horse race. I mean, if the dragons are real, then they'd certainly pose a threat to the average horse. But maybe we're not talking about an average horse. Maybe that's how to make sense of this. Okay, so I'm going to try and follow through with this idea that dragons are becoming a nuisance, a dangerous animal proliferating in the wild, encroaching upon farmland, eating sheep and cows, setting fire to crops. The agricultural industry it's all becoming a bit of a worry with food shortages. Farmers and inventors are looking for a solution. Electric fences are completely useless against these giant pests who can simply spread their wings and fly over any barrier unless you build some kind of fireproof dome to protect your crops and animals. But there's one family living in the country, a couple with a spoilt but sparky little girl who has great ideas from time to time. This family are in the trade of breeding racehorses. Only one day, their little girl looks up from her bowl of cereal and asks, "Why don't we breed horses that can keep dragons away? Like giant guard dogs, only guard horses." And the parents look at each other over their coffee and think, if that were possible, we'd make a packet. How would they do this? I can't help but think that to make a horse breed that is big enough and strong enough to scare off those pesky dragons, they'd have to get them to crossbreed with dragons. Now there's a challenge. It feels unrealistic, but then again, isn't that the job of fantasy? To make the impossible seem possible, to bring it alive with details and characters. The snorting and the stamping inside the barn, hot clouds of breath, a high-pitched whine. Is it a horse behind that door, or has a small dragon, a youngster, crept in from the cold, having lost its way in the forest? The little girl takes tentative steps towards the door, then bolts back towards the house. And this is when she has her idea. Even if that was just one of the horses, what if? What if they could trap a young dragon and get it to crossbreed? Or train it? There are so many ways to write this, different avenues to explore if you decided to give this idea a go. Let's just consider some of our options. Does it feel like a disaster movie to you? Is that the sort of thing you want to write? As a book, you would probably class that as thriller. How dire is this situation, this food shortage for the country, or does it even affect the whole world? A different scale of the same problem would open up different kinds of stories. On a big scale, the country bumpkin family would probably come under scrutiny of the authorities, maybe even the Secret Service, if they're found out to be trying to create this new breed. If they seem to be successful, they might even be forced out of their homes and made to work in secret in a lab. Which also makes me think about genetic engineering. Why would they bother trying to physically crossbreed a horse with a dragon if they can do the mixing in a test tube? This is feeling rather Jurassic Park, or should I say like the latest Jurassic World. And dinosaurs and dragons are kind of similar in a lot of ways. But if you prefer to work with a smaller scale story, you could set it in the past or in a sort of generic fairy tale setting. So then you avoid the labs and the whole world politics because you'd really like to write the scene where the couple try to capture a young dragon and keep it in their shed in the hope that they can get it together with their prize-winning stallion. Now I'm starting to get Shrek feelings. Donkey and his dragon wife? Every time I bump into these big stories that have already been done, it always makes me step back and consider, okay, what do I really want to write and how can I make it unique and stand out from what's already out there? Because I don't want to repeat anything. But I would say something I've learned along the way and which I'm still learning, I still find it difficult to accept, is that the uniqueness of ideas is often overrated. I mean, I love weird, unexpected stories, so a part of me will always instinctively disagree with this no matter what. But most of the books and movies that are out there are based on human situations that we've all experienced or witnessed in some way before, so that they're relatable. Or in fantasy, you often get the same but different. I mean, how many vampire stories must there be by now? How many paranormal romances or murder mysteries? What your story has in common with other stories can help you to know who your audience is and how to appeal to them and fulfill what they're expecting. What matters is whether you can grasp their attention from beginning to end. And the beginning of that journey is finding the details that spark off your imagination and brainstorming all the things that you could do with the story before selecting the very best ideas. That's how to come up with something that's original and very much you. The uniqueness of your writing comes of its own accord. If you just set aside the similar movies or books that you've watched or read before and hone in on the core of what your story is about, the characters will be your own, the style will be your own, and you can think up unique ways of twisting the circumstances and the obstacles that the writers have to overcome. Approaching stories in this way and challenging myself to explore the different avenues that I can take an idea down has definitely made me less worried over the years than I used to be about striving to prove my own uniqueness, because it's there, it will be there, if you deep dive into your imagination and trust the process. On that note, which rabbit hole will you fall down? Lots of story ideas to explore in today's show. We've had dragons as a national or international pest, a fantasy horror about clown costume designers or makers, and haunted furniture, a spirit that longs for the bottom of a lake. So, what can be the phrase of the show? The writing prompt challenge for you. I think I like the boisterous rocking chair. Yes, if you'd like to join in with the story brainstorms, please do write to me and tell me what the boisterous rocking chair conjures up for you. Just go to annatizard.com and click the contact button at the bottom of any page, and just let me know what you think. But of course, if you're inspired by any of the exquisite corpses that have come up on the show, I would love to hear from you. And if you publish something, I really want to hear from you. Just tell me where I can find the story and I can announce it on the show with a link so other listeners can read it too. Until next time, go forth and be inspired. I hope you enjoyed today's Brainstoryum. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.